Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to the Beyond the Vault weekly updates. With me, of course, is the one and only Andy Sheckman. You can find him, of course, at milesfranklin.com. Andy, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
JC, I am great, brother. How are you? Nice to see you.
Doing well. Crazy busy. We're coming up on the Beyond Mystic conference here in just under a month from now. And so we're on the last stretch of getting all that organized. We're excited to see you in Ottawa, of course. Andy, it's going to be one hell of a woo beginning together here with the community. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. We are triple casting on YouTube, X, and also on Rumble. We're going to be looking at things perhaps in a different way this week than we normally do. Andy, just judging by things since Trump has taken office, I don't think you and I have been on the show. We've had some issues with our schedule, matching it up together in the last couple of weeks. But yes, it appears that we're moving into a brand new territory. And if you're looking at what gold has been doing and what's happening at the LBMA, it seems that something is very, very different in the back end, yet most of our viewers, including myself, can't really put our fingers on it, but something feels off, Andy. Can you help us shed some light on all of this craziness, Andy? Where do you want to go first?
I mean, it's kind of a progression of events, JC. I'll tell you, in 2019, when I started talking about the BRICS, no one was talking about it. And I would say, am I out of my damn mind? Like, I'm saying all this stuff publicly, and then it happened. And that's kind of what gave me some notoriety in the industry. I was able to put together some crumbs, follow the trail, if you will, like Hansel and Gretel. And I see something similar to that right now, albeit different than anything I've ever seen, ever in my career. And I say that, I think it's fair to say I don't say things like that. I don't say things like, this time it's different than anything I've ever seen. I'll try and run you through this progression of events and see if you guys all come up with the same kind of feeling that I do. Okay. So the beginning of what I'll talk about for the first 2 or 3 minutes, if you'll indulge me, this will be a little bit longer diatribe than normal. And this will kind of dovetail into some of the articles you want to talk about. It'll be intermixed throughout all of it. But I think it's worth listening to because something feels way different to me, way different than ever before. So, if we go back, I've talked on your show, the first thing I started talking about in 2019 was that the Bank of International Settlements, which is the most powerful bank in the world, revalued gold as the world's only other tier 1 reserve asset. Now, let's just be flat out blunt. They don't do shit like that for the hell of it, right? It's the most powerful bank on the planet. They are the central banker's central bank. And now this was overlooked by everyone, really. I mean, no one in the media or in the financial sector talked about gold being revalued. But think of how significant it is that since the end of World War II, in essence, there's one tier 1 reserve asset, U.S. Treasuries. But now there's gold. You would think that would be something that 60 Minutes would put front and center, of course, 60 Minutes and their stupidity. But you know what I'm getting at. You would think that this would be bang. People need to know this, that the dollar and its treasury market has a challenger for the first time. It's U.S. Treasuries. And I appreciate that, Jake. I love you. And Jake, I kind of talked about this last night, so this will be redundant for you. But for those that haven't heard this, I have this feeling. I really do have this feeling that things are about to get very interesting. So we get gold as a tier 1 reserve asset. And then at the same time, not only do we see the German Bundesbank in 2017, 2 years earlier, repatriate all their gold from the New York Fed and the Bank of England, that same year we see the Dutch National Bank, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Czech National Bank, all of these banks said, yeah, by the way, we would like our gold back too. They had all been net sellers for the previous 6 or 7 years prior to that. And then in 2018, they bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined. And then in 2019, they doubled that amount. They go on a massive buying spree. And then the BIS says, oh, guess what? We've reclassified gold tier 1. Now, they obviously told them what was coming. In the following year, in 2020, I started talking about many things, the Belt Road Initiative. I continued to talk about the central banks buying gold. And then I talked about a phenomenon that we had never seen before. And that phenomena was a draining of the COMEX market by a group of traders that we had never seen before. The COMEX market, which is, for those of you who don't know what that is, if you'd ever seen the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, that is the COMEX market. That was in Chicago. There's also the New York Mercantile Exchange. These are the exchanges that trade and price everything from orange juice futures, like in Trading Places, to gold, to oil. These are the price setting houses or mechanisms for the world. And the COMEX publishes every week something called the Commitment of Traders. It's a list of the positioning of just the very largest traders on the exchange. And typically, my whole career, it would be the commercials on one side and the specs on the other, the speculators, the hedge funds. And it was a zero-sum game. One would go long, one would go short. The commercials would go long, the hedge funds would go short, and vice versa. But the COMEX market was designed originally for offsetting risk. Like for me, I have 5,000 ounces of gold in my warehouse. If the price falls by $100, I'm out $500,000, and vice versa. If it went up $100, I'm up $500,000. But that, you don't do that when you're running a business. You don't speculate. So if I have 5,000 in my warehouse, I sell 5,000 on COMEX. The price drops by 500 in physical, goes up 500 on COMEX. I am market neutral. It allows me to offset my risk so that I can run and conduct a business free from speculation. That's not a smart way to run a business over time. So they always have had the ability to stand for delivery on these contracts. Nobody ever did. Never. Maybe 1% or less of these contracts stood for delivery. They were used originally, whether it be a farmer offsetting his risk or a producer or a gold company like mine, you use it to offset your risk. You take the other side of the trade, in essence. So in 2020, all of a sudden, there's a third group on that Commitment of Traders report list called the others. And the others are believed to be sovereign wealth funds. And they start taking delivery. And this is, whoa, what the hell is going on? We're seeing huge deliveries come out of the COMEX market. And this is when things really started changing. The central banks and the others, which would be sovereign wealth funds, which don't have the same reporting requirements that the central banks do. If the central bank buys gold, like the PBOC, the Bank of China, right? People's Bank of China, they're required, if it meets criteria 995 fine, I think, or 999 gold or silver, they have to report it to the IMF. But if a proxy bank, a commercial bank on behalf of the PBOC, a sovereign wealth fund on behalf of the PBOC, or maybe even the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, if they buy gold and silver, well, they don't have to report it. But the same thing is true with all of these countries. Lately, we've been seeing the PBOC and the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia get caught by not reporting. We've talked about China flying around the world and buying doré and concentrate directly from miners and refiners so that they could disintermediate the market. It's clandestine. No one wants to tell everyone how much gold they have. China's numbers are completely fugazi. And here in the United States, we haven't updated our numbers since 1956. So no one wants to tell anyone how much gold and silver they're buying. All right. So we look at, now we get to where we are today. And things are starting to get really crazy. So let's start with the ETFs first and foremost. And then we'll talk about London, and we'll talk about the COMEX, and we'll talk about what I believe. So the ETFs, JP Morgan, as I've talked about many times, which I believe is an agent for the government. And if you watch Chris Marcus's podcast with Bart Chilton, you'll believe that, where Bart Chilton, the head of the CFT, admits many of the things that I talk about that some would have said are conspiracy. He says they're true. He was the head of the CFTC, the Commodity Future Trading Commission. He admitted this stuff and died a week later. Now, I'm not saying there's causation there, or maybe it's just coincidental, but he's more or less outed JP Morgan and Ben Bernanke and the Treasury Secretary Paulson and said that, you know, all of this stuff on manipulation and whatnot, it's true. So anyways, the ETFs, when JP Morgan paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the precious metals market, they were still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust, SLV. And everyone's like, well, geez, man, that's kind of nuts. The fox guarding the hen house, one of the largest stockpiles of silver in the world. They were fined $920 million. They made $1 billion that year in their trading desk for gold. And so they walk away up $80 million, slap on the wrist, and still controlling the world's largest silver trust. But most people don't know that about 2 months ago, they took over for GLD also. They and BlackRock are now the custodians of GLD, one of the largest stockpiles of gold in the world. They hold more gold in 2 vaults, in JP Morgan's vaults, than most of the G20 countries do, okay? And they're holding one of the largest stockpiles of silver in the world, on top of the fact that Ted Butler, God rest his soul, assumed that they had purchased over 1.5 billion ounces of silver off market over the last several years while they were manipulating the price down. And are they doing it on behalf of the government? Because Blythe Masters, who used to run their trading desk, said, yeah, we don't buy for JP Morgan, we buy for customers. So, all right, keep all of this in mind. So now GLD is custodied by, as is SLV, by the biggest cartel criminal bank on the planet, JP Morgan, and BlackRock. You could argue these are pieces of the US government, whether you believe it or not. I would argue that they are tied in incestuously. All right, that's in mind. So then we get to the LBMA. I've talked at length many times about the way they trade on the LBMA. So, for example, then the LBMA is the London Bullion Market Association. And when I talk about all the banks that have repatriated their gold, the central banks from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, well, they would keep it there because the New York Fed gave direct access to the COMEX in New York, and the LBMA, which is the Bank of England, they were keeping it safe in the Bank of England. They give direct access to the LBMA. All of these countries have brought all their gold home from both locations, most of them. India, as an example, brought 100 metric tons home a few months ago. They have almost all of their gold. Most of it they've been keeping at the Bank of England. Well, now they hold it themselves. There's a lot of repatriation. Who's been buying all of the gold over the last several years? Undoubtedly, with plenty of evidence, it's the central banks. And in fact, those numbers are increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. And most of it came from the West. Over the last 4 years, the United States was net exporters of gold. Guess what happened since November when the election happened? They're now net importers. Here's where the story starts to change. They're net importers. We are net importers of gold and silver. In fact, let me see if I can give you the amount. And you have to hear all of this because it's going to all come together in a moment.
Yeah.
Since November, the United States has brought in roughly between 12 and 13 million ounces of gold, and almost 50 million ounces of silver has been moved from London to the United States. All of this gold and silver is moving to the US. JP Morgan is holding GLD and SLV, the massive stockpiles of gold and silver. What is gold? The only other tier 1 asset in the world next to treasuries. Who's been buying it all? The central banks. Okay, things are starting to come together a little bit. When we talk about the LBMA, they have 800 million ounces of silver in the vaults, of which we are told by the LBMA that 500 million belong to the ETFs like SLV. The other 300 million is available to trade, yet somehow they're trading 2.9 billion with a B ounces of silver throughout the day, every single day on average. That's 3.5 times annual global mine supply, 10 times the float. The float is 3 million, 300 million. The trading is 3 billion. Okay, that math doesn't work because it's supposed to be an over-the-counter market where every contract is actually available for delivery. But a lot of these exchanges, no one ever stands for delivery. 90+% of the trades on the LBMA are paper oriented. They're backed by nothing but a commercial bank's ability to keep the price low because they have so much money they can keep shorting it, keep shorting it, keep shorting it. But when you short it, someone takes the long end of the trade, right? If one person shorts, another person takes that contract as a long. There is a delivery mechanism there. So over the last few weeks, things have begun to happen there. Now, they say it's because of the Trump tariffs. I don't think it is. That's the ruse of all of this, right? What did Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, just say? He said, we want to monetize the balance sheet of the U.S. government. Now, those of you who have looked at the balance sheet of the U.S. government, if you Google it, it's striking. About $5 trillion is all they have in assets. The largest asset, nauseatingly enough, is student debt, about 1.5 trillion or more. That's about 40% of the asset base of the United States government, not the U.S., but the government. The next in line, number 2, is military. So these two things you're not going to monetize at all. There's real estate, number 3, national parks and land and whatnot, could do that, and gold. Now, his largest asset, his largest holding, Scott's, is gold. He wants to remonetize or revalue the monetize the asset side of the balance sheet. There's not much that you could monetize but gold or land. All right, so that's in mind also. And then we look at what's happening at the LBMA. All of this metal is flowing under the guise of tariffs, because on the COMEX, gold and silver are rehypothecated 1,000%, 2,000%, 10 to 20 times the amount of contracts that are, or bars that are in the vaults. You have 10 to 20 times the amount of contracts or more. It's rehypothecation. You sell the same contract over and over and over and over again because no one stands for delivery, right? And it's all paper, right? Well, now they're thinking, well, geez, if there are these tariffs, I better bring them the bars home because there's not any gold here in case someone stands for delivery. I better get it here. That's the ruse. So the tariffs are coming. We need to bring it. And it's called exchange for physical, which is that I buy a contract in New York. Because of its fungibility, I can give it to the LBMA and they send me the metal, in essence. So the LBMA clearing time is T+1. That's 1 day. Trade +1, you get your metal. It's now
are they not up to 4 to 8 weeks now since this is happening?
Yes. 6 to 8. Yeah. So you're talking 40 to 50, 60 days before you get your metal. That almost sounds like a default to me, kind of. And so all of this metal is coming home because people are saying it's tariffs, right? Check this out. For the February gold contract, 59, this is a record, by the way, 59,296 contracts stood for delivery in February, for delivery in New York. So each contract's 100 ounces. The biggest previous delivery ever in the COMEX history, 47,132. You're talking 2,164 contracts, 12,000 plus contracts. So you're talking 5,929,600 ounces of gold stood for delivery in New York in the month of February. JP Morgan is bringing $4 billion worth of gold and delivering it to the COMEX in the month of February. If you look at SLV and GLD, I talked about who's running those. There's massive short positions in them, and you can naked short SLV and GLD, which is really stupid, but they can. There's a 953 million ounce short position in SLV right now, 953 million ounces. About 3 weeks ago, to borrow a share of SLV to sell short, the cost was 0.5%. Over the last 3 weeks, it's gone up to 12%. There were just 10 days ago or so, 10 million shares available to do this with. There's now 10,000. There's a 99.9% reduction in those shares. You want to talk short squeeze? You need to cover that position. You're damn well screwed if this goes the wrong way. When we look at GLD, in GLD, let me find the number because it's kind of striking. In GLD, just recently, how many ounces, how many tons have come out of GLD? I want to say like 16 tons have come out of GLD. And I'm pretty sure that's the number. I don't know why I didn't put this down somewhere where I could easily find it, but I believe, here it is. GLD saw 16 tons of gold exit. Now, when the analysts look at that, they'll say, well, that's if the shares are being sold and it's decreasing, well, that's people profit taking. Bullshit it is. That's the insiders saying the great taking is coming. Something's going on. And only the insiders, like the commercial banks, can take those shares and redeem them for physical gold. 16 tons have been pulled up, but who's administrating it? Oh, yeah, it's JP and BlackRock. So let's put all of this together for a moment. Let's put it all together. Trump has done more to
hold on just a sec. Just backdrop here. January and February, these standing for deliveries, the numbers you just described, is this unique? Like this has never happened before?
Way outside the norm.
Yeah.
And on top of becoming net importers, on top of having JP Morgan now control GLD, on top of SLV, on top of the massive amount of people importing metal from around the world, supposedly because of these tariffs, on top of Scott Bessent saying we're going to remonetize the asset side of the balance sheet. There's nothing on the asset side of the balance sheet but land and gold, really. On top of Judy Shelton, who I interviewed, who said, Andy, they will issue gold-backed treasuries on July 4th, 2026. Trump and I have talked about it in the previous administration. There's a high probability she will be on the Federal Reserve Board, maybe even lead the Federal Reserve when Powell's term is up next year. She was his nominee in 2016, although not confirmed, was an advisor and still is. And she said, look, we want to sell treasuries backed by gold. Now, what did Cynthia Loomis say, that the senator from Wyoming? What has the head of the Dutch National Bank been screaming for 2 years? What are the members of the Bundesbank in Germany saying? They all say the same thing. We need to revalue the gold that is held in the name of what account? You can't even make it up. The gold revaluation account. That's the name of every central bank balance sheet that holds gold, is in the gold revaluation account. Now, the BRICS are this close to doing it. What did Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil, head of the BRICS New Development, say? We have agreed to a new settlement currency called the unit. It's a settlement currency, not a common currency. 40% gold backed, deliverable upon request, 60% BRICS plus currencies traded over Mbridge. They have agreed to it in principle, a gold-backed settlement currency, deliverable. So my feeling is this: November comes along, they go from exporters to importers. Record amounts of gold flowing in, over 12 million ounces flowing into New York since November. And there's probably a lot more than that. GLD now being taken over by JP Morgan. They already run SLV. Gold is the only other tier one asset. The Treasury Secretary, it's his largest holding, and says we're going to remonetize the balance sheet. The previous Fed nominee writes a book right here. It's good as gold, writes a book, and the whole premise is backing the U.S. Treasury market with gold, because no one wants to hold our bullshit anymore, because we've destroyed the value of the Treasury market. We've weaponized it. We've inflated it. And I think Trump knows this. I do. And I think he wants to beat to the punch the BRICS. I think he understands the only way to do this is to revalue gold. Now, over my shoulder is Roosevelt. He confiscated gold. They won't do that this time, but they could take the ETFs. I've said that for 20 years. I've been screaming that. People say, what about confiscation? No, they'll take the ETFs. You got giant stockpiles of gold and silver that is administered by the cartel banks, and you can't take possession of it anyway, unless you are one of the insiders who has a basket, which is, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they can cut that off if they want. But the point of it is that instead of going door to door, they take, JP Morgan has all this gold in two vaults, New York and London, two of them. SLV, same thing. And so now they take all that gold and silver, massive stockpiles. They don't face the backlash of eminent domain and confiscation. It's held with a pink bow wrapped around it. You can still own physical gold, because those of us that own physical gold and silver are the pimple on the elephant's ass. And now you do what Judy said. You know what else Judy said to me? Judy said, well, I want to see stable coins issued off of the gold-backed treasuries. That's their pathway to doing this without bringing in the CBDC. It's the same damn thing. They control the on-ramp and the off-ramp. They will control it, but it will be third-party issuance so that it's more adoptable. People will be more susceptible to taking it and to agreeing to it. So you have all of this stuff happening at once, and all of this gold coming back, and everyone screaming of revaluing it, held in the revaluation account, the only other tier one reserve asset, and the price keeps going higher, 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 and nobody sees it. The American public has their head so far up their ass right now, they do not see what is happening. They don't see it. They're all all being blinded by the shiny objects, the Bitcoin, the Nvidia, the Apple, the risk on trade. And so it's the craziest, what am I trying to say? It's the craziest, I want to know what I'm trying to say. What am I trying to say? I can't even think of the word. I'm having a senior moment. It's an inverse correlation. The insiders are running as fast as they can to buy gold and silver and take possession of it. The American public is doing the opposite. The premiums on gold and silver are the lowest I've ever seen in my career, ever. I don't get it. I really, truly don't get it. As the price, if you would have told me that gold would be on the heels of 3,000, the futures market right now, if that's what spot is, let's look at the futures right now real quick. Bear with me 1 second. The gold futures price is that silver. Let's look at gold real quick. Here we go. Gold future is 29.21. So it's about the same. So we're on the heel of 3,000 and no one notices it at all. And record inflows, record deliveries. Something's happening. This has never been this way. Never. I would argue it's a default in London right now. T+1? No. T+6 weeks. What is happening is, in my mind, Trump is setting up to revalue the price of gold and tie it to the treasury market and beat the BRICS to it. And that's a big statement to say, right? I mean, I'm out on a limb saying that. It may be bigger than the BRICS limb in 2019. But I'll tell you this. When people say this time it's different, sometimes it is, usually it's not. Sometimes it feels like it, sure looks like it, then it's not. What he's done already is different than any politician any of us have ever seen. Like getting shit done like that, and even signing an executive order to bring back plastic straws, right? Yeah. Shocking people. Even the Democrats are saying, wow, man, I mean, it's pretty impressive. A lot of them are. Some of them are stupid and are bitching about the fact that he wants to fix the inefficiencies and the theft of the government. But my point is simply this, is that he's in a position to do something radical. And what better person to do it than the person who understands bankruptcy and reorganization than him? And surrounding himself with a cabinet that is doing all they can to restore credibility to our culture and to the American ideals. I'm telling you, as God is my witness, I feel like my spidey sense is saying, this is going to happen. They're going to do something big time with gold. They will not make it illegal to own, but I could see them taking the ETFs. I could see them taking all that gold in the COMEX. I could see them doing that, resetting the system, pegging it to gold. I don't know how or what is the catalyst, but I will tell you that I've never seen anything like this, not even remotely close, in 35 years. I hope that was coherent, what I'm trying to say.
Dude, you're on fire. So I didn't want to interrupt you. That was absolutely amazing. And I hope people can send this video to their friends. It really lays the map for what's happening. Now, if I'm getting this right too, you and I, over the last number of years of doing these shows, we've seen more and more gold and silver being drained from the COMEX. We were seeing the sovereign wealth funds, the banks around the world pre-positioned themselves for something that was happening, but at a slow pace, but steady pace. What we're just seeing now is a huge acceleration. That's what we're saying here. So something just shifted. You've pinpointed it to November. Of course, the election was November, Trump getting into office. Now, going back to this BRICS things, I thought it was interesting because when the BRICS announced their unit, we did a couple of shows on this. We talked about the 40% backed by gold. And when Trump came into office, he said, okay, I'm going to slap 100% tariffs on those countries that are trying to move away from the dollar, right? Now, your opinion is here that Trump wants to beat the BRICS here to this gold-back trade note, or whatever you want to call it. Now, in your interview with Julie Selton, you talked about a gold treasury note all the way out in July 2026. If he's going to beat the BRICS at it, one would presume that something has to give way before that. Mind you, it might not be a gold-backed treasury, but it could be a revaluation of sorts.
Well, you have to have gold high enough to issue the treasury to begin with. So exactly. Yes, it would be a process. My only thing is, gold's up $200 in, let me see real quick before I make that statement. But if you look, gold's up
last month,
in the last 30 days, it's gone from a low of 2660 to 2907. So if we look at the last 60 days, 2500 to 29, it's up $350.
Yeah.
In essence, in the last 2 months, it's up about $900 in the last year. And are they going to let it stair step? Or are they going to, is it going to slingshot at one point? I don't know. But I believe in my soul that they realize, he's smart enough to realize that gold is becoming significant, that the Bank of International Settlements doesn't screw around when they make a move as huge as saying, well, there's only been one tier one asset for over 70 years. Let's make another one. That's not just something to gloss over. And when you see the amount of central bank buying and central bank repatriation, it is telling you something is different right now. It really is. And all I can tell you is that I can't tell you exactly how it all plays out, but what we are seeing right now is different than anything in all of the time I've been doing this I've ever seen. The U.S. has always been the one selling the gold. They're never the ones buying it. And the fact that we are now net importers, it's ironic because just recently China turned from net exporter of silver to net importer. They're the second largest producer in the world. Zoltan Pozsar said that we are moving to a system that is about transparency in commodities, Bretton Woods 3. The previous administration seemed like they wanted to screw the country. And if you wanted to screw the country, you continue to suppress the metals and let all of these other countries steal all of the natural resources from across the globe at subsidized prices. And they've done that. They know what they're doing. They know what we've been doing. We've been holding on the prices, some would say, to support the illusion of supremacy of the bond market and of the dollar and of our system. Well, they're exploiting it. And now, if you want to stop that, you got to let the prices go much, much, much higher. At the same time, what does it do to the dollar? If gold goes way up, what does it do to the dollar? In relation to gold, the dollar falls in value. That's what Trump wants. He wants a weaker dollar. That's what he said. And so even though we have all of this gold, if the price of gold keeps going higher and higher and higher, it's not arbitrary. It's going higher against what? A falling dollar.
Right.
So,
well, let me ask you this. Somebody's in the chat. So there's a couple of items, and I know you have another show at 3, so I want to get a few things in here in terms of questions. So if they are going to revalue, going back to this idea of monetizing the balance sheet, if they are indeed going to look at gold in the equation, in this particular article, they were opining that $21,000 per ounce of gold would about make it. Do you see that number? How does that relate to?
Well, because the reason they say that is that every $4,000 increase in the price of gold based upon the number of ounces we have would give free and clear $1 trillion to the treasury market. So, I mean, to the treasury, to the general, what's it called? The TGA, the Treasury General account. So if they put it at 21,000, you're going to get about $4 to $5 trillion free and clear. And the crazy thing about it, Trump would say to Scott Bessent, tell Jerome Powell to revalue gold. No congressional approval needed. Boom, done.
Now, overnight. Yeah.
And is it really that crazy? I mean, we can just say to the world, we'll pay $21,000 for anyone who wants to deliver their gold to the U.S. Treasury. In a world where Bitcoin can be 5 times that price, why the hell is that crazy? Exactly. It's not. And if it weren't for the suppression on COMEX and the LBMA all of these years, God only knows where the price would be. But to support the illusion of dollar supremacy, they've stepped on it. That's Gibson's paradox. The inverse relationship between real interest rates, which were suppressed for 30 years, and the price of gold. So now that the game has been, see, for most of the time, the West has been doing this. The countries of the global South and of the East were not wealthy, sophisticated, or coordinated, or motivated enough to stand for delivery. They didn't care. Now they do. And now they see that this is the way to continue to de-dollarize and exploit the stupidity of a Western system that had the hubris to manipulate Mother Nature and to screw with interest rates and to screw with all of the commodities. Remember when oil was negative 40 a barrel? Well, that's the COMEX saying so because, the tankers were sitting outside. the Gulf of Mexico during COVID and couldn't get in. Who gives a shit? It's not worth -40 a barrel. That's the paper market, the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
And all of these countries have realized, and I've talked about the BRICS grain exchange. The guy who's running it said, yeah, we produce and consume more grain than the West does, but we don't control the price. It's controlled on COMEX. But with the development of the grain exchange, that will change. Well, you don't think that they know we're doing that with all of the commodities? And they do. So now I think Trump's advisors, who are finally telling the guy, telling the politicians the freaking truth, says, man, if we don't change our path, we are going to be screwed. The UK just wrote a letter that basically said, it was an open letter, and it said, we're pretty much screwed because we don't have any natural resources, and we are reliant on much of the world, in particular China and the Eurasian continent. And do you want to be reliant on everyone else for your natural resources? Or are you smart enough to say, if you really want to put America first, and get the damn resources back home, put the prices high enough so that it can't be siphoned out of your vaults, and it will at the same time devalue the price of the dollar, which is what they want. So I think this is where we're going. Now, I can't quite, I see all of this and then it's blank. Like, how does it
translate? Yeah. How does it happen?
What happens? Okay. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Or they do it overnight or what?
Things might become clearer by the day here as more of these news comes out and as more of the pieces are being placed on the checkerboard here. Now, another question people are asking in the chat is, okay, well, hold on. This seems to be like we followed you, we followed your thesis, and we can see the footprints here of this movement that's been happening over the last number of years and now accelerating. The question is, in the chat, they're saying, well, is this good news or bad news? And I would say, well, it depends which side of the trade you're on. But speak about that right now. How is this good news for the common man who's not holding gold and silver right now?
Well, I mean, when you realize that, for example, let me see the exact number here. I wrote it down last night. Right now, the United States has, as we know, almost 37 trillion in debt. That doesn't take into account the nearly 200 trillion in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. Doge can, they can save a lot of money, but not enough to matter. Tariffs can make a lot of money, but not enough to matter. You put 25% tariff on every product coming in the country, it's a few $100 billion. That's what we gave to the Ukraine, for God's sakes. And when you talk about the Doge, okay, they get rid of $1 trillion plus. You still have $1 trillion deficit, but that doesn't take into account, in the next 13 years, there's $28 trillion of U.S. government bonds that will mature that we have to pay. That doesn't take into account all the debt that we continue to need to sell new bonds for. So you got all of this massive amount of debt. And my mentor, Richard Russell, Marco Rubio, what did he just say? Within 5 years, the U.S. may no longer have the ability to impose sanctions due to reduce dollar dominance. Well, he's right. That's the BRICS. That's moving away from all of this. And so you have a few options. Richard Russell always used to say, my mentor, this was 20 years ago. He said, the Fed is so screwed. All they can do is inflate or default, period. And the spending has only increased. Trump said he won't touch Medicare. He won't touch Social Security. He won't touch the military. There's nothing else really to cut. The rest of it amounts to peanuts. Yes, it adds up at big peanuts if we owned it, but from the amount of money they spend and they're indebted, it's nothing. So unless you cut Social Security, you cut Medicare, you cut all the government military pensions, you just blow the whole damn thing up. Well, that's the Great Depression. So you can inflate, as all governments have, you can default, or you can revalue the price of gold dramatically, which devalues the dollar. And yes, there'll be lots of inflation, but what it does, it's a much more gentle way of resetting the system, so to speak. And if the system were to reset to a new gold-backed system, I think it's very interesting to point out that there's between $7 and $9 trillion owed to foreigners of the 200 trillion. It's all owed to us. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government military pensions. Who's been buying the treasuries? As China, Saudi, Russia, India, Japan, they're all dumping treasuries and moving into commodities without the counterparty risk. That is actually, they're all beating the performance of the treasury. They're not buying our treasuries anymore. They're selling them. Who's buying it? Well, there's $7 trillion in money markets. Those are 100% invested in U.S. Treasuries. The insurance companies, the individuals like us that are chasing yield, leaving the banks, paying nothing, buying money markets or directly buying Treasuries, all of the Treasury debt primarily is owed to the American people. It's much easier to default and reset and start over first after we show you we've made such an attempt to bring back our culture. And God damn it, it's just too much. I'm sorry. We have to face this. We need to crawl through the tube that Andy Dufresne called through, 2 miles of shit to get to the other side. We have to do it. But we show you that we're trying to do our end. We're putting the government on and making them accountable. We're getting rid of all the fraud. We're doing what we can, the Doge this and the Doge that. But you know what? Hey, we're even going back to a merit-based system and all of the things that made this country proud. But since we're all patriotic and gung-ho, well, we got to reset or we're in trouble and their children are in trouble. And let's pull up our pants and get to work. And I guarantee you something like that's going to happen. And they're going to reset the system and they're going to peg it to gold. It has to reset. Somehow, some way, there has to be some form of a reset. And if of 200 trillion, we only owe roughly 5% to the rest of the world and 95% to us, well, I think that's a deal Trump could make. Yeah. And maybe I'm way off base. Maybe I am. I could be. But I don't know how else to put all of these pieces together without saying something like this seems to be happening right out from under our feet. And if you look at what Trump is doing, it's so far different than anything any of us have ever seen from a politician. Sure. Not only is he keeping his word, but he's doing it in a very swift way. And he is standing up to the most powerful people on the planet.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that if that's what he's doing, well, this is more important than anything. The future of this country depends on getting our shit together. We are the largest debtor nation on the planet. We have destroyed credibility. We have destroyed the value of the dollar. We have destroyed the demand for the treasury market, and we have offshored so much of our natural resources that if 4 more years of the previous administration, God help us, we would have been in very big trouble. Maybe this is for real. Maybe he is not the Trojan horse, as some people think. Maybe he's riding on it. And I don't know. Maybe he is a Trojan horse and we're all deceived. And maybe I don't know. But if you don't question everything, you've learned nothing over the last 4 years. If you just accept things as being what your eyes, which are usually lying to you, tell you, then you haven't learned a damn thing. So I think outside the box. And this is the only thing that really makes sense to me right now is that this is the beginning.
You know what else makes sense too? If he were to do that and devalue the dollar, so to speak, by revaluating gold, perhaps to soften the blow, that's why he's kind of preempting here this no income tax situation, right? So that could be another way to kind of ease the pain, so to speak.
And if you look at all the shit that our tax dollars have gone to,
of course,
I mean, it's unbelievable. And they should get rid of it. And you know what? So let me put it to you this way. I moved from Minnesota to Florida, not because of taxes, but because Minnesota lost its mind during the George Floyd riots. And it became a place that I once loved more than anything to a place that I couldn't even think of living any longer. I moved to Florida. Now, there's no income tax here. And I will tell you 1,000% that the money that I used to give stupidly to the state of Minnesota, I spend in the economy here. And that money is far more productive in the economy than going to the government who does stupid shit. In the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz did put tampon dispensers in every boys' high school bathroom across the state. Now, with no disrespect to the young ladies who identify as boys but have their periods still, and the 1 out of 1,000 that need to access that and wasn't able to bring it from home or go to the nurse's office, how disrespectful is that to the tax base? We had a $16 billion surplus in the state of Minnesota. It's all gone because of stupid shit like that. And then you look at what's happening on the federal level, it's even worse. There's a guy that I love named Johnny Bravo. I think he's one of the best YouTube podcasters, period. He's a genius, and he's a buddy of mine, but he is smart as anyone I've ever met. And he said something the other night that I have not been able to substantiate anywhere. And I do not look at him as someone who's ever said anything that he couldn't substantiate. So I'm going to say this and say, I can't substantiate, and I've looked for it, but he said that there was about $280 billion given to the Clinton Foundation, most of which was supposed to go to Haiti, but $3 million went to Chelsea's wedding and 10 to her mansion. Now that's criminal. He said this on the podcast 2 nights ago. He's a smart dude, as smart as anyone I know. Now that's the kind of shit that I hope comes to light, and I hope all these people go to jail, and I hope these things happen. And we have to start over, and we have to peg it to sound money. And he's talking, what did Zoltan Pozar say? Bretton Woods 3, a system that will be described with transparency and commodities. What did Elon just say? We should put all the government spending on a blockchain, trans-frickin-parency. Put all the gold holdings on a blockchain, trans-frickin-parency. I mean, we're moving in that, and now all the commodities are coming home. Oh, commodities and transparency. So could we be moving to a system that says, look, we're not going to do a redeemable gold where you get a gold coin and spend it at the store, although you've got a bunch of states that are doing that. Maybe they are, but we're going to start by backing our treasury market to gold, and we're going to make it redeemable in gold at the end of 50 years or whatever the number. She said 50 years. Who knows what they do? But the
you're going to start by reevaluating it first, like you said.
You got to have the gold here first, and you have to have it high enough in order to peg it successfully. I mean, all of these things are just happening so symbiotically and all at once that, I mean, either a few people are going to get really rich on the price of gold and silver, or there's something much bigger in store for it. And I don't know, Jean-Claude, either I'm really stupid or I see something and I'm naive enough to say it out loud. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it just seems like this is what is happening.
Yeah. Last question. Do you think that this dollar, once it's devalued against the gold, do you think that Trump issues a new dollar under the Treasury? Could that be part of it too? Again,
well, I mean, I think it would be some form of a new system. Or maybe not. Maybe they just, the first step is to back the Treasury market with gold to give that credibility and demand. I don't know. That's what I mean. I'm not sure how they're putting it all together. But you can see what they are doing. So I guess what I would say is this: everything they are doing, and the fact that it's tier 1 and they're bringing it all home, says they would be in position to do whatever the hell they want if they revalue it. Yeah. And the fact that it's held in what's called the gold revaluation account, that's the name of it. And the fact that Cynthia Loomis says, let's revalue gold and buy the strategic Bitcoin account, and the Dutch National Bank and the German National Bank all say it, and Judy Shelton says it, and I don't know. You tell me. I'm trying, I take all of this fact and then say, okay, well, shit, this is what it looks like. To me, that's what it looks like. It looks like they want to reestablish confidence, not only in our culture and American pride and meritocracy. And yeah, we work really hard. That's why we are who we are. We have outworked the world in manufacturing and in intellect and all of these things, which we just let go to shit over the last 4 years. And at the same time, we're going to reestablish confidence in our government, which has been wasteful and corrupt, and in our money system. And if he's smart and he wants to go down as the greatest president in the history of the United States, that's exactly what he would do. And he would set us on a path that our children and grandchildren can be excited about. And that's really the most important thing, man. And I hope that is what I'm seeing. And I guess only time will tell, man. And, you know, I don't know.
I think we're running out of time, Andy. Everything's happening so fast. I think we're running out of time. Somebody in the chat is saying, okay, what happens to silver if gold breaks? And don't forget, too, at the last BRICS meeting, Russia came out and said, hey, we're taking away the price control mechanisms of commodities, including gold here. So Trump's on a short timer if he's going to do what he wants to do, and if he's going to revalue per his own needs. The rest of the world is rushing to that same objective. So at some point here, something has to move very quickly. But what does that do to silver and the manipulation on silver?
Especially with the midterms in 2 years, you know, while he's got the 54 senators in the Congress that are on his side, got the majority, he's got to do it quick. Silver won't be tier 1. Silver won't, I don't think we'll go to a bimetallic system like we did before with gold and silver. But I think it has been recognized by the majority of the big players in the world that silver is not industrial, it's strategic, and you need it. And the same thing is happening with silver, only much greater in terms of the lack of real bars backing the contracts. And you're seeing a lot of silver come to the United States as well. The number is, in terms of silver that has been sent in recently, real quick, sorry. In the month of February, 2,747 contracts stood for delivery. That's 13,735,000 ounces, 427 tons. That's just in the month of February. But remember, for gold, the previous high was 47,132 contracts times 100. This was 59,296, the all-time high. And in conjunction with going to a net importer. I mean, all of this stuff, this is way out. This is so far an outlier. This is 4 feet of snow on in my backyard here in Delray Beach. 4 feet of snow in July. I mean, I have 2 snowmobiles in Minnesota, my sister's garage. I'm not going to call her and say, hey, Betsy, send me my snowmobiles because it snowed last night, because I know it's an anomaly. It's been melted by noon. Same thing is true with this. This is so far outside of anything I've ever seen. And I spend 3 hours a day reading. I mean, it's like ding, 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 ding. If you don't see this, and the craziest thing about it is that because our media sucks so bad, no one sees it. But guys like me, that a lot of people can say, oh, it's bullshit, it's conspiracy. Really? Well, I said the same thing about the book 4 years ago.
He's just selling his book. Yeah, he's just selling
his book.
Andy, speaking of selling your book, man, people are very excited when you dropped the price at $169 over a spot here for junk silver a couple of weeks ago for me and Big Swear. You have,
I'll keep it there.
You have
it's there, but I also want to say that there's something that's happened in the numismatic market that I've never seen before in my career as well. Sure. For those people in the United States, $20 gold pieces like these, certified MS62, MS63, MS64. I haven't recommended them in probably 15 years because they were too expensive. For the first time in my career, because everyone is just, I mean, the market's upside down. These coins, which in 2007, 8, and 9 were carrying between a 40 and an 80% premium to $1,000 gold spot price when Eagles were 4 or 5% over. Yeah. Most of my career, they were between 15 and 30% over, not the 40 to 80% that they were during those 3 years. But I will tell you that they were too expensive for all of these years. You've never heard me say it. I took part in a buyback, thousands of ounces, thousands I have in stock, at the lowest prices I've ever seen in my life, in my career. Never even close. You can buy 63 grade St. Gaudens for less than the Gold Eagle. I would have paid you a $700 premium over a Gold Eagle in 2007, 8, and 9. For people who want to buy gold right now, I will tell you, in my 35-year career, 12 billion in sales, pre-33 gold numismatics have never been more attractive, not even remotely close. It's less than or the same price as or barely over, depending on what grade you get, of a Gold Eagle. And that's never happened in my entire career. So I would say everything's on sale, JC, everything. Whether you're talking junk silver, we have Philharmonics that are ridiculously cheap. We've got the numismatic coins, everything. Gold Eagles at like 75 over spot. It's so stupid that the biggest money in the world is running to accumulate and repatriate, get possession of it, and the American public is doing the opposite. It's the craziest thing. And then you look at GLD, 16 tons have come out of it. No, that's not the public selling like the analysts tell you, profit taking. It's them exchanging their shares for physical and getting out of the way before whatever happens. The insiders know, and you can see that the insiders are moving ahead of the crowd. Just like I noticed it with the BRICS and the repatriation and all of the things that are just outside the norm. Mm-hmm. It's because the people inside inside the family, well, they know what's happening and they move quietly before everyone else. Just if you're paying close enough attention.
Yeah. Guys, if you want to be an insider, check it out. Go to beyondmystic.net/silver. Fill out the form there and get Andy to send you stuff. And Andy, if you have those new gold coins, if you have a poster for me, send that to me and I'll
send them to you. I can't wait to see you and everyone in Ottawa in March. I'm fully psyched for that. And thanks for letting me rant, man. I feel better.
I loved it.
I feel like I just dumped, like I've been sitting in a psych chair for the last hour. It's good to get it out. But
yeah,
Anyways, I appreciate you, brother. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. If I'm right, you can say you heard it here first.
Yeah, I think so. And at the same time, like you said, we need to be asking these questions. We need to be thinking outside the box. We're moving into uncharted territories. Our old way of reviewing the world and analyzing the world is changing by design. So we also need to change the way we look at the world. And Andy, you've done a fabulous job here today, laying that information out for us to decode and to further these conversations so that we don't get hoodwinked and left on the wrong side of this bet. So big thank you to you, Andy, educating the audience today. Guys, please join me again at 8 o'clock Eastern tonight for the next edition of the Beyond the News. Actually, no, it's at 4 p.m. today. We've moved it. So yes, at 4 p.m.
You got 1 hour. You got 1 hour, JC, to get your shit together. I got to fly as well. You're the best, good, man. I can't thank you enough. I love you. I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. I got to go. I got to do this again, but to be continued. Look forward to picking up where we left off, brother.
All right. Thanks, Andy. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Au revoir.